Have you ever felt like you gave everything, your time, your effort, your heart into something, only for it to fall apart? Imagine building a life with someone, investing years of hard work, making sacrifices, and then realizing that none of it was enough. You think you know what's important, who you can trust, and where you're headed. But suddenly the rug is pulled out from under you, and everything you once believed in is shattered. That was the moment I found myself in. I had been building my future with Clarissa, my wife, and the family business she inherited, Crimson and Veil. But when things took an unexpected turn and my entire world began to unravel, I had no idea how it would end. The betrayal stung more than anything. To be cast aside when you've given everything, to have everything you've worked for thrown away as if it was never meant to be, felt like an impossible weight to carry. The day they called me into the boardroom, I thought it was just another meeting. But as I walked in, I quickly realized it wasn't business as usual. And in that moment, my life would never be the same again. The room felt cold, a stark contrast to the warm, confident energy I had carried into countless meetings before. But today was different. Today, everything was about to change. Clarissa sat across from me, her arms crossed, eyes focused on the documents in front of her. Her usual warmth had vanished. In her place was a woman I didn't recognize, one who seemed detached, distant. Bianca, her younger sister, was perched in her chair, clearly enjoying the moment. She looked at me with a smirk that made my stomach twist. I had always been used to the boardroom tension, the cutthroat nature of the business world. But today, this was something else entirely. It was as if the air itself was thick with betrayal. "Julian," Bianca said, breaking the silence, her voice sharp and devoid of empathy. "We've decided it's time to part ways. Your position at the company is no longer needed." I stared at her, the words not fully registering in my mind. I had worked tirelessly for years, long nights, strategic meetings, sacrifices made for the sake of the company. All of it now being dismissed with a few simple words. I felt like I was suffocating, the weight of what was happening crashing down on me. "Excuse me?" I said, my voice shaky but firm. "What are you talking about? I've put everything into this company. I've given my all. The expansion plans, the partnerships, the deals I secured, all of it. And now you're telling me you're letting me go?" Clarissa, who had remained silent up until this point, shifted in her seat. She didn't meet my eyes. I could see the hesitation in her, but there was no compassion, no apology, just an empty void where my wife's love and support had once been. "Clarissa," I said, my voice quieter this time, "you can't be serious." She finally lifted her eyes to meet mine, but there was no remorse in them, no regret, just indifference. "It's not personal," she said. "This is what's best for the company." I felt a sharp pain in my chest. Those words echoed in my mind. What's best for the company? I had always believed that she and I were in this together, but I was wrong. She wasn't looking out for our family, our future. She had already made her decision. My heart raced as I looked around the room. The board members were all silent, their eyes avoiding mine as if they were afraid to witness the destruction happening before them. Not one of them stood up to challenge what was happening. No one even flinched. "I was alone," Bianca continued, her voice almost mocking. "We've had a meeting, and it was unanimous. The company needs a fresh start, Julian. You've done your best, but it's time for someone else to take the reins." A bitter laugh escaped me. Fresh start? Was that what she was calling it? Throwing me out like a broken toy, discarded after it had outlived its usefulness. The thought of all the years I had spent, my loyalty, my commitment, seemed so meaningless now. "What about Noah?" I blurted out, surprising even myself with the words. "What about our son? He needs both of us." The moment I spoke those words, I knew it was a mistake. Clarissa's eyes flashed with something. Anger, frustration, guilt. I couldn't tell. She quickly looked away, the wall she had built around herself sealing her emotions away. Bianca shot me a glance that was filled with judgment, as though my concern for our son was irrelevant. "We're talking about the business, Julian, not your personal life," she said coldly. "If you can't separate the two, then maybe this is for the best." I was reeling. I had spent so long trying to keep everything together, trying to balance work and family, trying to make Clarissa proud, and this is what I got in return. I could feel the sting of tears threatening to form, but I forced them back. I wouldn't cry in front of them. Not here. Not now. What now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What do you want from me? Clarissa's gaze softened, just for a moment. She looked like she might say something, but then she glanced at Bianca, and the moment was gone. We've already made the decision, Julian, she said. You're done here. The silence in the room felt suffocating. I stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. Everything I had built, everything I had worked for, was crumbling in front of me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I turned and walked out without saying another word. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me broken. I didn't want to show them how much it hurt, but it hurt. It hurt more than anything I had ever experienced. Outside the boardroom, I stood in the hallway, trying to regain my composure. I could feel my pulse racing in my temples, and the overwhelming sense of betrayal left me breathless. I had been blindsided. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted, had just ripped everything away from me. And for what? To protect the company or to protect herself? I couldn't answer that. All I knew was that everything I had worked for, everything I had given was no longer enough, and that was the hardest pill to swallow. The days following my dismissal from the company felt like I was walking in a fog. Every time I stepped into the office, every time I sat down at my desk, I was reminded of how little control I had left. They had taken everything from me, the company, the trust I'd spent years building with Clarissa, the future I had been working so hard to secure. And now it felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure of whether to jump or step back. I tried to keep my composure, to go through the motions of everyday life, but nothing felt real. I couldn't escape the gnawing feeling that I had been discarded, used, and then thrown away. There were moments when I would sit at home, staring at the walls, wondering what went wrong. I'd never seen it coming. Not like this. There were signs, of course. There always are. But I had ignored them. The long nights, the time spent away from home, the constant pressure she had been under. I had told myself it was just stress. I had made excuses for her, for us. But the truth was clear now. Clarissa had checked out long before the boardroom meeting. She had been slipping away from me, emotionally detached, long before she made the decision to walk away. And I had been too blind to see it. I had let her leave, thinking I could fix it, thinking we could fix it together. But I had been fooling myself. I hadn't spoken to her since that day. And though I had no desire to, there was still a part of me that couldn't let go. I kept hoping that one day she would come back and explain herself, that she would apologize for abandoning me, for abandoning Noah. But that hope was fading, just like everything else. I tried to throw myself into work, hoping it would help numb the pain, but it didn't. It was only a distraction. I spent hours on the phone with clients, trying to salvage what little I could from the mess Clarissa and Bianca had left behind. I spoke with the legal team, trying to ensure that my departure didn't ruin the deals I had worked so hard on. I thought about the future of the company, my company now, and wondered if I could rebuild it from the ground up. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could control what happened next. I had learned that much. I had spent years building the business, but now I would have to rebuild myself. The life I had known was gone, and I had to figure out what came after that. But it wasn't easy. Every day was a battle to keep from drowning in my own emotions. I found myself questioning every decision I had made. Why hadn't I seen the cracks in our relationship? Why hadn't I noticed the signs that Claire was slipping away? The anger came in waves, but it wasn't just for Clarissa anymore. It was for myself, for letting it all slip away without even realizing it. I had a lot to sort through, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let her define me. I wasn't going to let her mistakes, her betrayal, shape the rest of my life. I couldn't change the past, but I could change the future. One afternoon, as I walked through the city, I passed by a cafe we used to visit. The memories hit me hard. The conversations we had there, the way we would sit across from each other, making plans for our future. I could almost hear the laughter we shared, the hope we had. But that hope was gone now. The life I had built around Clarissa was nothing but a shattered dream. I stepped into the cafe, not to relive those memories, but to find some kind of peace. I ordered a coffee, sat by the window and watched the world outside. People came and went, laughing, talking, living their lives. I wondered what it would feel like to be free from this weight on my chest, to be able to move forward without the constant reminder of my failure. As I sat there, I realized that I had been carrying this weight for far too long. I had been holding on to the past, thinking that if I just worked hard enough, if I just stayed patient enough, it would all come together. But it hadn't, and now I needed to let go. Let go of Claire, of the company, of the life that was no longer mine. I took a deep breath, feeling the fresh air as it filled my lungs. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew it was time to move forward. I couldn't keep living in the past. The world had moved on, and it was time for me to do the same. I began to make changes. I reached out to old friends, reconnected with people I hadn't spoken to in years. I started doing things I had neglected, things that made me feel alive again. It was the small things that brought me the most comfort. A walk in the park, an afternoon spent reading a book I'd been meaning to get to, an evening spent with people who genuinely cared about me. But even as I began to find peace in the small moments, the reality of what had happened kept creeping back in. I couldn't escape it. The company, the betrayal, Clarissa. These were things I had to face head on. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was strong enough to handle it. I was learning to let go of the anger, to let go of the hurt. There were still days when I thought about Claire, when I wondered where she was, what she was doing. But those thoughts were fewer now. They didn't consume me like they once had. I had work to do. I had to take control of the company. I had to focus on rebuilding. But more than that, I had to rebuild myself. I had spent too long living for someone else, waiting for someone else to fix things. It was time for me to take charge of my own life, and that was the hardest part. Letting go of the past was never easy, especially when the person you thought you could trust had been the one to destroy it. But I knew I couldn't keep holding on to the anger. I couldn't keep reliving the pain. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. I had no idea what would happen next, but I knew I was ready to face whatever came my way. I had learned that my strength didn't come from the things I built or the people I trusted. It came from within, and that was something no one could ever take from me. Let us know where you're watching from today, and if you're new here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to join our growing community. The weeks following the boardroom betrayal were a haze of emotions and conflicting thoughts. Part of me wanted to bury my head in the sand, retreat into the quiet of my home, and pretend that the world hadn't shifted beneath my feet. But the other part of me, stronger, more determined, knew that retreating wasn't an option anymore. I had been handed a new life, whether I liked it or not, and it was up to me to decide how I would face it. I started making small changes in my routine. The house, now quieter than ever, became a place of reflection. I cleaned out Noah's room, carefully packing away his toys and clothes, not yet ready to give them away, but also not willing to keep everything as a shrine. It was a painful process, but one that I knew I had to go through. Each item I packed up felt like I was letting go of the past. Letting go of Noah was never going to happen, but the things he left behind, I couldn't hold on to everything. The first time I stepped back into my office after everything had gone down, I was nervous. The last time I had been there, I had walked out, humiliated and blindsided. But now as I sat at my desk and looked at the familiar surroundings, I realized something. This was mine. This was the place where I had fought for what I believed in, and I had no intention of letting it slip away. The phone calls came in, the clients I had worked with for years reaching out, unsure of what would happen next. I had no answers for them at first, but I wasn't about to let the company collapse. I knew what needed to be done. I knew how to keep this ship afloat. It wasn't just about fixing what had been broken. It was about rebuilding, reinvigorating the business, and showing them all that I was still in control. But I couldn't do it alone. I called Marco, my trusted right-hand man, and asked him to meet me at the office. He had been loyal, and I knew that he had the skills to help me get back on track. As we sat in the conference room, Marco looked at me with concern. "Julian, I've been watching you. You've been quiet these past few weeks. What's really going on?" I leaned back in my chair looking out the window. The usual, business, clients, all the things I'm supposed to do. I just need to get back to what I know. Marco didn't respond immediately, but I could tell he was thinking it over. Finally, he spoke. "No, Julian, what you really need is to decide what you want. The company, your life. You've been so wrapped up in everyone else's decisions for so long that you've forgotten what you want. His words hit me like a punch in the gut. He was right. I had spent years catering to the needs of the company, to Clarissa's family, to our clients, to everyone except myself. But now I had to ask myself, what did I want? What did I need? I didn't have an answer yet, but something inside me stirred. A small flame of hope ignited. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to start thinking about what was next for me, instead of trying to fix everything I had lost. That night, I spent hours going through the company files, making notes, assessing everything. I saw the holes, the gaps in the business, the things that Clarissa and Bianca had failed to see. They hadn't been paying attention. They had gotten caught up in their own egos, in their own world, and in the end, they had let everything slip away. But I saw the potential. I knew what I could do. I could fix it. I would fix it. The next morning, I called a meeting with the board. I hadn't yet made up my mind about who to trust, but I knew I couldn't do it alone. When the board members walked in, I stood at the front of the room, a different man than the one they had seen just a few weeks ago. I was no longer a shell of my former self, defeated by Clarissa's betrayal. I was stronger. I was ready to take back what was mine. "Listen up," I said, my voice steady and commanding. "I know things have been uncertain, but I'm here to make it clear. We are moving forward. This company will not just survive, it will thrive. And it's going to thrive with or without the people who have let it slip through their fingers." The room was silent as the board members exchanged nervous glances. But I could see it in their eyes. They were ready for change. They were ready for leadership. They were ready for someone who wasn't going to back down. I laid out my plan for the next phase of the business, focusing on innovation, growth, and reinvigorating the company's brand. I talked about the importance of looking to the future and not letting past mistakes define us. I talked about rebuilding trust with our clients, improving our product, and making decisions that would ensure we stayed ahead of the competition. And when the meeting ended, I could see the difference. The doubt was gone. The skepticism had faded. They were ready to follow my lead. After the meeting, I walked back to my office and sat down, exhausted but determined. This was it. I was no longer fighting to save something that had already been lost. I was building something new, something better. The phone rang again, and it was Marco. He must have known I was deep in thought, but he wasn't going to let me off the hook so easily. "Hey, Julian," he said. "I know we've got a lot to do, but don't forget to take care of yourself. Don't let this business swallow you whole." His words hung in the air. I knew he was right. I couldn't keep pushing myself to the breaking point. Not if I wanted to be successful. I had to take care of myself too. That night, I went for a walk in the park. The city was alive around me, bustling with energy. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was part of it. I wasn't just a bystander in my own life anymore. I was taking control. I was making decisions that were mine to make. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of freedom. I wasn't defined by the betrayal of my wife. I wasn't defined by the loss of my business. I was defining myself. The road ahead would be long, but I wasn't afraid anymore. The company was mine to lead, and my life was mine to live. And that's exactly what I intended to do. The days began to blur into each other as I settled into the new rhythm of my life. It wasn't easy. Every morning, I woke up with the weight of what had happened pressing on my chest. The betrayal, the loss of my son, the collapse of everything I had once believed in. It was all still raw. But now, I was learning to live with it. The pain didn't go away, but it became something I could manage. I spent most of my time at the office poring over the business plans, reviewing the strategies Clarissa and Bianca had left behind. There were holes, gaping holes, in every aspect of the company. It wasn't just the money they had wasted. It was the lack of vision, the lack of direction. I could see the failure in every corner, and I couldn't help but feel both anger and determination. I wasn't just fixing a business. I was fixing the mess they had left behind, and I was going to do it my way. Marco had been a steady presence through it all. He had stayed loyal when everything had crumbled. And now, as I sat down with him, it was clear that we had to make some major decisions. "Julian," Marco said, his voice low but firm, "we can't keep doing this alone. We need to bring in fresh talent, people who share your vision. We need to surround ourselves with people who can help us take this company to the next level." I nodded. He was right. I couldn't do it all. I needed help. real, capable help. But that meant trusting people again. It meant opening myself up to the idea of collaboration, something I had always struggled with. The idea of trusting others again, after everything Clarissa and Bianca had done, was terrifying. But I had to face it. If I wanted this company to succeed, if I wanted my life to succeed, I couldn't keep doing everything alone. I agree, right? I said. We'll start recruiting. But we need people who understand the value of hard work, who don't take shortcuts, people who won't abandon us when things get tough. Marco smiled, a rare expression that reminded me of the man I had started this journey with. I'll get on it. You just focus on keeping things steady. Over the next few weeks, we began the process of rebuilding. I reached out to former colleagues and clients, reassuring them that the company was on a new path. We started making small but impactful changes, updating products, improving customer relations, and most importantly, fostering a new sense of trust within the company. It wasn't an overnight fix, but it was progress. And for the first time since everything had fallen apart, I felt like I had control again. I had a plan, a vision for the future, and slowly but surely I started to see the fruits of my labor. But even with all the success, there was still a piece of me that couldn't let go. I couldn't forget what had happened with Claire. I couldn't forget the way she had left me, the way she had betrayed me, abandoned me, and Noah. Every time I thought I was moving on, those thoughts crept back in, reminding me that she was still out there, living her life, and I was left picking up the pieces. One evening, as I was leaving the office late, I ran into someone I hadn't expected to see. Diana, Claire's mother. She was standing outside the building waiting for me, her expression unreadable. "Diana," I said, my voice stiff. "What are you doing here?" She looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "I wanted to talk," she said, her voice soft. "About Clarissa. About everything that happened." I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear her excuses, her justifications. But something in the way she spoke made me pause. There was no anger in her voice, no defensiveness. Just regret. "Talk about what?" "Diana," I said, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "You think you can just show up after everything, after what she's done, and expect me to listen?" Diana didn't flinch. Instead, she took a step closer, her face filled with something that looked like sorrow. "I know what my daughter did was wrong, Julian," she said quietly. "But she's struggling. She's not the same person she was. She's been through a lot, and I don't think she knows how to fix it." I felt a mix of emotions welling up inside me. Sympathy, frustration, anger. "You don't get it." "Diana," I said, my voice low. She walked away from me, from Noah. "You think I'm supposed to feel sorry for her now?" Diana sighed, her shoulders slumping. "No, I don't expect you to forgive her, but I think you deserve to hear the truth. She's been lost for a long time, and I think she's finally starting to realize that." I looked at her, trying to process her words. Was she telling the truth? Was there something in Claire's mind that had driven her to act this way? Or was it just a selfish desire to escape the responsibility of being a mother, a wife? "I don't know what she wants from me, Diana," I said, feeling the anger start to rise again. "I don't know what she's asking for. She's had every chance to fix this, and now she's gone." Diana's eyes softened. "I know, Julian, but sometimes people don't realize what they have until it's too late." I didn't want to hear her pity. I didn't want to hear about how Clarissa had been lost. I had been lost too. I had watched my son die. I had buried him alone. And I didn't have the luxury of turning away when things got hard. "I don't need her, Diana," I said firmly. "I've moved on, and I'm done trying to save people who don't want to be saved." Diana nodded slowly, her gaze heavy with understanding. "I just wanted you to know that she's sorry. She's really sorry, Julian." The words hit me like a wave, but I didn't let it show. "I'll believe it when I see it." As Diana turned to leave, I stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of her words settle in. Maybe Clarissa was sorry. Maybe she did care. But it didn't matter anymore. I had built something stronger than my past. I had built something that would survive, with or without her. And in that moment, I knew that I had made the right choice. The past had no hold on me anymore. The future was mine to build. The days were getting easier, but the pain never really went away. It lingered in the corners of my mind, like a shadow that refused to leave. But I was learning to live with it. I had to. The anger, the resentment, it had all started to fade. Not because I had forgiven Clarissa, but because I had learned how to stop letting her actions define my future. The business was doing better. Slowly but surely, the new team I had started assembling began to show results. We were making moves, securing new clients, and repairing the damage that had been done. There were setbacks, of course, but for the first time in months, I felt a sense of pride in the work I was doing. This wasn't just about survival. It was about thriving. And I wasn't going to let the past hold me back. But even as the company began to rebuild, I couldn't escape the weight of what had happened. Every day I wondered if I would ever feel whole again. Losing Noah had shattered something inside me, and no matter how much I tried to distract myself with work, that emptiness remained. One evening I was at my desk, going over some paperwork, when my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen and saw that it was Clarissa's number. For a moment I hesitated. What could she possibly want? Why was she calling me now, after everything? I didn't answer the call. Instead, I stared at the phone, my mind racing. Maybe she was calling to apologize. Maybe she was finally realizing the extent of the damage she had caused. But as much as I wanted to believe that, I knew better. After a few minutes, I listened to the voicemail she had left. Julian? Her voice was soft, hesitant. I know I don't have the right to ask for anything from you, but I just need you to know that I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you, and I never meant to hurt Noah. I've been a mess, and I know it's too late to fix things, but I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. I closed my eyes as I listened to her voice. There was a part of me that wanted to reach out, to hear her say what she should have said months ago. But I didn't need her apology anymore. What I needed was closure, and I knew that I couldn't keep waiting for her to fix things. It wasn't her job to fix what had been broken. It was mine. I deleted the voicemail without responding. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt, but I had nothing left to say to her. I had already said everything I needed to say when I told her to leave. She had made her choice, and I had to live with that. But I didn't have to carry it with me anymore. The next few weeks brought more change. The office became a place of quiet determination, the buzz of phone calls and meetings filling the air. I surrounded myself with people who were focused on the future, not the past. It wasn't about pretending that nothing had happened. It was about moving forward despite everything that had gone wrong. One day as I was walking to my car after work, I ran into Marco. He had been my right hand through all of this, the one person who hadn't given up on me. He was one of the few people who had stuck around through the mess, and I was grateful for that. "Hey, Julian," Marco said as he walked over, a friendly smile on his face. "How are things going?" I smiled back, though it wasn't the smile of someone who had it all together. But I was getting there. "Better," I said simply. "It's been a lot, but we're moving in the right direction." Marco nodded, his expression turning more serious. "You're doing a great job. Man, I know it's been tough, but you're getting there. I can see it." I appreciated the words, but I didn't want to get too comfortable. I couldn't. Not when so much was still uncertain. "Thanks," I said, though I wasn't sure if I believed it yet. "It's not easy, but it's something I'm learning to do." Marco clapped me on the back, a supportive gesture. "You've got this, and when you're ready, we'll keep moving forward. But for now, take care of yourself. You deserve it." As Marco walked away, I felt a rare sense of peace. I didn't have all the answers yet. I didn't know what the future would hold. But I knew I had taken the first steps toward healing. I had learned that I wasn't defined by what happened to me. I was defined by how I handled it. And that was a lesson I would carry with me for the rest of my life. Later that night, I sat at my desk again, staring out the window at the city lights. The office was quiet, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the weight of the world pressing down on me. It was still there. Of course, the pain, the loss, the betrayal. But it wasn't all consuming anymore. It wasn't running my life. I stood up, stretching, and looked around the office. This was mine now. This was my future, and I was going to make it count. I wasn't just rebuilding a company. I was rebuilding my life. And for the first time in months, I felt ready for it. The phone buzzed again, and I picked it up, hesitating before I looked at the screen. This time, it wasn't Claire's number. It was a message from an old friend, one I hadn't spoken to in a while. The message was simple but meaningful. "Hey, Julian, let's catch up soon. Been thinking about you. Hope everything is going well." For a moment, I sat there staring at the message. It felt like a small sign that things were moving forward. And in that moment, I knew that everything would eventually fall into place. The past would always be there, but it didn't have to control my future. I had learned that much. The weeks passed with a steady rhythm. I had done what I thought was impossible, rebuilding my life, taking control of the business, and learning how to live without the shadow of Clarissa looming over me. But there were still moments late at night when the memories of her and Noah would hit me all at once. There were still days when I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure of what to do next, unsure of what the future held. But I had come to accept something important. I didn't need to know what came next. I didn't need to have all the answers. What mattered now was that I had the strength to move forward, no matter what. I had rebuilt the company from the ground up, and now I was finally beginning to rebuild myself. It was one afternoon as I sat in my office, reviewing the latest financial reports when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, but something told me it was important. I hesitated before picking it up, my pulse quickening. "Julian," a familiar voice said, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. It was Clarissa? "Clarissa," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. "What do you want?" "I know this is probably the last thing you want to hear," she said, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. "But I need to see you. We need to talk." I felt a rush of anger surge through me, but I forced it down. I had promised myself I wouldn't let her back into my life, that I wouldn't let her control my emotions any longer. But despite everything, despite how badly she had hurt me, I knew this moment had to happen. There was unfinished business between us, business I could no longer ignore. "I don't think there's anything left to say," I replied, keeping my voice calm, trying not to let the years of resentment slip through. "You made your choice, Clarissa, and I made mine." "I know," she said quietly, "but I need to explain. Please just give me a chance to explain." I stayed silent for a moment, my thoughts racing. What did she expect from me now? After everything she had done, after everything that had happened, what was there left to talk about? But then I realized that it wasn't about her. It was about me. I had to do this. Not for her, but for myself. I couldn't keep carrying the weight of this unanswered question. "Fine," I said, finally breaking the silence. "Come to the office. We'll talk." I hung up the phone, my mind swirling. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I knew that whatever came out of this conversation, it would be the final chapter. The last piece of the puzzle I had been trying to put together for months. And after that, I could move forward, for real. The next day, she walked into my office, an unfamiliar face. She was no longer the woman I had married. She wasn't the woman I had once loved. She was someone different, someone who had been broken by her own choices. I saw it in her eyes. An emptiness, a sadness that I hadn't noticed before. It made me wonder how long she had been carrying that weight, and if, somewhere along the way, she had realized what she had done. Clarissa stood in the doorway for a moment, uncertain. Then she stepped forward, her eyes meeting mine. "I'm sorry," she said, the words coming out in a rush, as though she had been carrying them for a long time. "I never meant to hurt you." "Julian," I was so lost. I thought running away would make things better, but it only made everything worse. I sat there, trying not to let my emotions overwhelm me. I had been waiting for this moment for months, but now that it was here, I didn't know what to say. I had wanted to hear her apology. I had wanted to hear her admit her mistakes, but now in the face of it, it felt empty. "Do you think an apology is enough?" I asked quietly. "Do you think after everything you've done, after everything you took from me, a few words are going to make it right?" She looked at me, her face filled with remorse. "No, Julian, I know it's not enough. I know I can't fix what I've done, but I just needed you to know that I'm sorry. I've spent so much time trying to outrun my mistakes, but I can't anymore. I have to face them." I nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. This was the closure I had been waiting for. It wasn't going to change anything, and it certainly wasn't going to make up for what she had taken from me. But it was a step toward healing. "You've done your part, Clarissa," I said, my voice steady but firm. "But I don't need you in my life anymore. I've moved on, I've rebuilt everything, and I'm not going back to the way things were." There was a long pause as she stood there, her expression filled with sadness. I could see the regret in her eyes, but I also saw something else. Acceptance. Maybe she had finally realized that there was no going back, that the past was gone, and the future was mine to shape. She nodded slowly. I understand, she whispered. I wish things had been different. I really do. I didn't respond. There was nothing more to say. Clarissa had made her choice, and I had made mine. As she turned to leave, I sat there watching her go. It wasn't as dramatic as I had imagined. There were no tears, no grand gestures. Just a woman who had made mistakes and was now walking away from the man she had once loved. And as I watched her leave, I realized that this was the end of that chapter, and the beginning of something new. As I sat back in my chair, looking out over the city below, I felt a strange sense of peace. The past had shaped me, yes, but it no longer defined me. I had taken the pieces of my life, the ones that mattered, and built something new, something stronger, something that no one, no matter how much they tried, could take away from me. I picked up my phone and sent a message to Marco. It's done. Let's focus on the future. I was done holding on to the past. It was time to move forward. I didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of it. And with that, I knew the journey ahead would be one I walked with my head held high. If you find this story interesting and want to see more touching, tense, but meaningful situations, don't forget to subscribe to our channel today. Leave a comment with your thoughts. Share this story with your friends and remember to like the video so we can stay motivated to bring you more great and meaningful content. Thank you for watching and supporting us.